What began as a routine voyage quickly spiraled into chaos, a disaster that shattered the lives of 1,400 passengers forever.
010 75.
This is their story. As the clock struck midnight on February 2, 2006, the Al Salam Boccaccio 98 set sail from the port of Duba bound for Safaga, Egypt, carrying 1,418 souls filled with hopes of reunion across the vast Red Sea. At the helm was Captain Syed Ahmed Syed Omar, a seasoned mariner who would soon face the ultimate test of his experience. Little did they know, a storm was brewing beneath the calm surface, destined to turn their journey into chaos. The sense of safety that once surrounded passengers began to fray, even if they couldn't grasp the danger. With every passing minute, they unknowingly drew closer to the inevitable capsizing, which would cast long shadows over the captain's judgment and seal their fate beneath the sea. After a brief stop, the ferry resumed its journey at 2:30 a.m. on February 3rd, as it traveled the waters approximately 20 to 30 miles from the port of Dubac. A fire ignited in the cargo hold, where 220 vehicles were tightly packed. "Captain, we have a fire on board. I repeat, fire on board." Captain Syed Ahmed Syed Omar briefly considered turning back, but his request was denied by the vessel's owner himself, Mamdouh Ismail. Ultimately, he chose to proceed, disregarding standard maritime safety protocols. The crew, inexperienced in handling such situations, doused the fire with seawater to extinguish it. Misinterpreting the situation, they believed the fire had been successfully contained and relayed this erroneous information to the captain, who resumed the voyage without conducting any inspection or confirming the fire's complete extinguishment. Frightened passengers, having witnessed the fire, began donning life jackets in a desperate bid for safety. However, under the captain's orders, crew members forced them to remove the jackets, stating that such actions would unnecessarily panic others. The crew members even restrained passengers who became too distressed, preventing them from preparing for a potential emergency. The captain's priority remained not in safeguarding lives, but in maintaining an illusion of control. Approximately 3 to 4 hours after the initial outbreak, the fire reignited, this time with greater ferocity, fanned by strong winds and turbulent seas as the vessel approached a position roughly 30 miles from Ir-Hada'a, Egypt. Meanwhile, panic spread as passengers fled to the opposite side of the vessel to escape the flames, creating a dangerous imbalance. The crew's frantic efforts to suppress the fire with water exacerbated the situation. The vessel's drainage systems, clogged by debris, failed to release the accumulating water. The added weight of the water combined with the uneven distribution of passengers caused a significant starboard list. Despite clear signs of the vessel's increasing instability, Captain Omar hesitated, issuing inconsistent commands as the situation spiraled out of control. "We're listing 18 degrees now," he remarked. "Captain, there's no opening," a crew member responded. "Why is the list increasing while the pumps are working? We need a solution for the ballast," Captain Omar demanded. "We're filling it, Captain," the crew member replied. As the vessel tilted at 20 degrees, the captain delayed the launch of the lifeboats, prioritizing misguided efforts to correct the list rather than evacuate the passengers, while crew members heavily urged action, warning a 25-degree list. His command still remained fixated on maneuvering rather than rescue. As the vessel's list reached critical levels and the ferry verged on capsizing, his final command echoed hollow: "All wheel left!" But it was already too late. Amidst the chaos, as passengers struggled for bare life, the captain quietly secured his escape, leaving the crew and passengers to face the impending disaster alone. His failure to organize a proper evacuation or instruct the crew on lifeboat deployment plunged the scene into further disarray as the ferry made its final descent into the abyss. His abandonment of command marked the ultimate betrayal in a catastrophe defined by gross negligence. As if the tragedy itself wasn't enough, there's a chilling twist that makes this disaster even more devastating. What truly haunts this story is the fact that the captain's initial request to turn back to port was rejected by the ship's owner and the very efforts of the firefighters to extinguish the blaze. Actions meant to save lives ultimately contributed to the vessel's sinking. Could this disaster have been averted if different decisions had been made? The answer became painfully clear as the Al Salam Boccaccio 98 succumbed to the depths. While lives were lost, the response from those in charge was staggering. Of the 1,418 souls on board, 1,031 perished in the tragedy, with 410 still missing and presumed dead. Only 387 individuals, including 24 crew members, were rescued from the frigid waters. Shockingly, it took a full 12 hours for a rescue boat to be dispatched after the ferry already sank, triggered by a telegram sent by the vessel's owner at 5 a.m., revealing that the Al Salam had not reached its intended destination. The haunting inefficiency of the response deepened the sorrow of those left behind even more. Unfortunately, valuable time slipped away before authorities even realized that the ferry was missing. Ismail promptly informed the Red Sea Port Authority and directed another of his vessels, the St. Catherine, to search for the stricken ferry. The crew aboard the St. Catherine managed to establish communication with a member of the Al Salam's crew who was on a lifeboat, confirming the vessel's devastating fate. By 8 a.m., rescue helicopters and military ships were finally en route to the area, but it took more than 10 hours after the initial distress before effective rescue attempts began. This delay was compounded by officials' inattentiveness, as many were distracted by an important soccer game being televised, a detail noted by Mohammed Gad El-Haq in his book, Large Scale Disaster. By 10 a.m., the rescue teams had managed to retrieve only a few survivors, barely addressing the overwhelming number still unaccounted for. In a further instance of mismanagement, the Royal Navy's LPD HMS Bulwark, positioned nearby, stood ready to assist Egyptian authorities in the search efforts. However, Egypt declined offers to help from international vessels and helicopters, complicating the rescue operation even further. The missed opportunities for aid, echoing the poor decisions made led up to this catastrophe, left a lasting impact on the tragedy, highlighting the dire consequences of inadequate leadership and misplaced priorities. As the full scale of the Al Salam Boccaccio 98 disaster came to light, the aftermath revealed a grim mosaic of failures that sealed the fate of more than 1,000 souls. When the voyage data recorder was recovered on February 21, 2006, it provided a damning insight into the hours leading up to the catastrophe. It wasn't just the fire on the car deck that doomed the ferry. It was the ship's total lack of an effective safety management system. The recordings, chilling in their finality, revealed a crew unprepared and incapable of handling even the most rudimentary emergencies. Amidst rising panic, their confusion and misjudgments were the prelude to the vessel's fatal plunge. In the shadow of this tragedy, legal consequences loomed large. Mamdouh Ismail, the ship's owner, and 5 others were swiftly charged with manslaughter by the Egyptian government. Yet even this pursuit of justice was mired in controversy. Ismail, despite his assets being frozen and a travel ban in place, managed to flee the country with his son. It was only later that they returned to face trial, though by then the damage to public trust was irreparable. A $57 million settlement for the victims' families did little to quell the sense of injustice. Of the 6 charged, 5 were acquitted, leaving a bitter aftertaste of suspicion. Ismail's deep political connections stirred whispers of corruption, and many began to question whether true accountability would ever see the light of day.
I think the judge was under political pressure Had he only looked at the documents, they wouldn't have been acquitted.
The investigation that followed confirmed what many had feared. A fire on the car deck may have been the spark. But the real culprit was systemic neglect. The failure to enforce proper emergency protocols, the absence of leadership in crisis, and the crew's inability to evacuate passengers or contact authorities in time magnified the tragedy. In the wake of the tragedy, families were engulfed in grief, their anger palpable as they searched for answers.
It's about justice, and the only just punishment for him is the death penalty.
The stark irony struck them hard. While their loved ones perished beneath the waves, those in power evaded true accountability. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching and for your invaluable feedback. Many incredible stories have been shared, some of which became videos on the channel. If you have any story suggestions, feel free to share them in the comments. Thanks once again.